It's well established that all the best training interventions start with a clear and well-designed set of learning objectives. Or is it? Personally, I'm not a massive fan, so in this video I want to talk a little bit about how I use problem statements. It's difficult to think of the L&D world without thinking of learning objectives. They are, for most of us, one of the very first things we learn. That lovely triangle, Bloom's taxonomy, gets shown to us all in some textbook, and we sit there and nod and think, oh, this is like a silver bullet. And then we actually start doing the job and realise, yeah, really not so much. In fact, the more you read into it, the more you realise, maybe this isn't quite so solid. Maybe I should not just use these terms. Maybe this just doesn't work all that well. Now, I wouldn't advocate for getting rid of learning objectives completely. I think they actually serve a really important purpose internally. They guide us and make sure that everything we're doing is helping us move towards a stated goal. What I don't like to see is learning objectives being put in front of end users. To start with, the language in them is not helpful. I've seen so many people be confused by the strange wording of a learning objective, and I totally get the argument of let's tell them what they're going to learn, but if the training is good, they'll learn it anyway. If you need to tell them these are the important bits, make sure you're paying attention when we talk about that, well, you're probably not a great learning designer, to be honest. Most of us, when we learn in a natural way, don't do so from a set of learning objectives. We have a problem that we're trying to overcome. And this, for me, is the biggest argument for using problem statements when creating training. Not so much to replace the role of learning objectives, but to better define what the actual need is, which so often is what we try and use learning objectives for and what they're just not designed to do. Learning objectives are inherently top-down. They define what we, the business, the organisation, the employer, want the employee to understand, know, apply, whatever language, whatever verb we're going to attach to the start of it, but all very top-down, all very content-directed. In contrast, problem statements are more commonly used in the world of product design, where it's important to define what the actual problem is you are trying to fix with a feature or upgrade to an existing product, or when creating a new product. Unlike a learning objective, a problem statement doesn't present the solution, but instead helps to define not just what the problem is, but what its root cause is and what impact it's having. Let's jump in and take a quick look at an example of how a problem statement is formed and then how we can use it to improve our training interventions. A great problem statement is made up of 5 sections, 5 considerations or 5 pieces of information. Now, it's important that all 5 are present and carefully considered. Coming up with a problem statement is not a 5 or a 10-minute job. It's based on a lot of the initial research we do. We have to do a lot of work to build it for it to be accurate, but the more accurate it is, the more helpful it's going to be. The first part of the problem statement is to identify the user. Who is the person you're trying to help? Now, this doesn't go as deep as the persona world does, in terms of demographics and specifics and sort of fictional character names and photos, but instead focuses on role and responsibility level identities. So for instance, we might say that the C-suite or senior leadership level, or this might be first-time leaders within the business, it might be new line managers, it might be first-day hires. Whoever the identity is, it's important to clearly understand that the more specific the who is, the more accurate the overall problem statement will be, and the more effective you can be in defining a solution. What we don't want to do, however, is get to the world where each individual person in a business has a problem statement. We do have to make some generalization, as always. So, if we were, let's say, going to go for a problem statement targeting new leaders, we might say, I am followed by a new line manager in the business. Problem statements always start with an I am statement. They are written from the point of view of the identified user. That's important, and you'll see why as we move forward through the process. Next up, we need to define the action that our users are trying to complete. Following on from our example, let's be really specific and look at first-time line managers. Perhaps the action they're trying to complete is their first set of annual reviews with their new team members. This is a great example of a really specific activity to that user group where there may exist a problem. In this instance, we might say that I am a first-time line manager and I'm trying to complete my first set of annual reviews. This is now the first section of our problem statement. We've defined who the user is and what they're trying to achieve. Next up, we need to look at the problem. This is where we need to clearly define the obstacle to success. This means really getting under the hood and figuring out what is stopping our desired user base completing the desired action well. This could be anything, but it involves us really getting in there and asking questions. Once we've found out what the blocker is, we can define our problem statement with a simple word, but. We've defined who they are and what they want to do. Now we define the but. But I have no experience completing annual reviews and have received no training. The next obvious step is to consider the root cause of this blockage. This means looking beyond what your initial research has said, looking beyond even what the users have told you the problem is, and really diving into where has this problem come from? Is there an organizational issue? Is there a training issue? Is there a budgetary or resource issue behind this? You can see how getting into this level of problem statement and definition really helps you move beyond training being an answer for everything. This is a great way to answer that "is this really a training problem?" question that we never want to ask someone who comes to us for help, but we always need to consider. This is where we can step away from just being L&D and start thinking like performance consultants, start really helping the business. So this is where we add to our problem statement the because section. We have our but, I have no experience and have received no training, and now we have our because statement. Because there is insufficient time allowed for me to be mentored by existing line managers and no training is available. Here we've identified not just that there's potentially this unmet training need, but also that there is an identified lack of resource for internal guidance and mentoring between experienced and new line managers. Not only are we potentially identifying work we need to do, but we're also able to understand what support may be available from within the business if and when we're unable to support them. Next up, and stepping way beyond the world of what you might find in a learning objective, we find the importance of empathy. This really important step is the consideration of how the problem is making the user base feel. Looking at our specific scenario, we think about first-time line managers, people who have never led teams before, have no experience completing these kinds of conversations with people, and this is where we discover that this situation makes our users feel that they are underperforming as team leaders and are not supporting the team as they should. This kind of dissatisfaction within role, this self-identification of underperformance, is a very positive thing. It shows your team are self-aware, but it also highlights that you are ultimately failing to provide them the support that they need. When we talk about getting buy-in from an organization, a problem statement can really help you hit home with senior leadership about not only what the problem is and where it's come from and what's caused it, but the impact it's having. So here's an example of a problem statement I created with a client last year. I'm a first-time line manager and I'm trying to complete my first set of annual reviews, but I'm struggling to have challenging conversations with some underperforming members of the team because I have no experience in having this kind of conversation and do not believe I can do so competently. This makes me feel like I'm underperforming as a team leader and not supporting the team as I should. Now, this is not a statement you would ever put on the first slide of a piece of e-learning to show people what they're going to gain from a course, or bring up at the middle of some kind of sage on the stage experience. But from our design perspective, from a performance consultant perspective, this kind of problem statement neatly identifies what is going on and what we're trying to change. From this, we can not only identify our intended user, our intended action, the blockers, the root cause of the blockers, and the current emotional experience that encapsulates all of this. Using this, we can get buy-in from senior leadership about the importance of this project, but we can also get buy-in from our intended users by speaking to what really concerns them, by prioritizing interventions that will help them overcome known blockers, by stepping out of our training must be the solution mindset and identifying key root causes that may not sit within our sphere of control. This is where we may need to liaise with planning in certain businesses to say, hey, these managers need more time to mentor each other. We might need to step away to a different area of senior leadership to identify where time can be made for that to happen, or where mentors can be found. This could in fact result in no training whatsoever, and instead an internal buddying system being created. That would be a wonderfully efficient solution to this problem, but one that would never come to be if learning objectives were treated as the de facto starting point for every project. Now, this is not an argument to stop using learning objectives. Far from it. I firmly believe that problem statements make the learning objectives that follow on from them more effective, more precise, and so much more useful. Now, I would 100% argue for learning objectives never being shown to a user again. I think they are a wonderful way to make people bored and turn off from whatever you're putting in front of them, and making them feel like they are back at school with those annoying chalkboard messages on the little side of the wall saying, in this lesson you will learn. As adults, we don't like to be dictated to. We like to be part of identifying the problem and creating the solution. Problem statements allow for that. Problem statements bring in the views of those who really matter, the people on the ground, the people you're trying to influence and help and support, the people who really make things happen in your business. So, let me know in the comments, in your projects, have you ever used problem statements? Are they something you'd consider using in the future, or do you use something else to make your learning objectives that little bit more effective? I hope you found this video useful. If you did, hit that thumbs up and please consider subscribing to the channel. Let me know in the comments what you took away, and if you'd like to support what we're doing here and the IDTX conference event set for March, please consider joining us on Patreon for as little as £1 per month.